Sovereign LLMs. From political ambition to enterprise architecture, there's a quiet but growing urgency in boardrooms across the world, not just about AI's potential, but about who controls it. As the race to build sovereign LLMs intensifies, these models are no longer viewed merely as technical feats. They are becoming instruments of national will, a response to the geopolitical tensions around data, the consolidation of cloud infrastructure, and the rising need for cultural and regulatory alignment. From the data-driven mandates of the EU to the identity-focused AI agendas of the Gulf and Southeast Asia, one question is taking center stage. Who should shape the systems that shape us? Across the boardroom and policy room, national AI strategies are converging around one common idea: control. Whether you call it technological independence, data sovereignty, or digital autonomy, the ambition is clear. Countries want to own their LLM future. From France's Mistral to India's Sarvam, from the UAE's Falcon to Spain's BERTin, sovereign LLMs are no longer theoretical. They are political currency and, increasingly, an enterprise question. As of mid-2025, over 20 nations, including South Korea, Brazil, Egypt, Germany, India, and Indonesia, are in various stages of evaluating or building their own sovereign LLM initiatives. For many, these aren't just experiments in AI capability, but strategic responses to cloud concentration, cross-border compliance, and cultural representation. But here's the tension. Symbolic power does not equal operational readiness. For CIOs and regulatory leaders, the promises of localization, cultural fluency, and strategic autonomy are seductive. Yet the models being offered are often brittle, shallowly tuned, and unfit for domain-critical workloads. Misclassifications in healthcare triage, toxic customer chatbots, and latency breakdowns during high-traffic events are not distant fears. They're real-world setbacks we've documented in recent Greyhound field notes. This note unpacks the sovereign LLM movement, not just as a technological trend, but as a strategic shift. We'll explore what sovereign LLMs really are, where they fall short, and how enterprises must evaluate, deploy, and govern them in a world that demands both autonomy and accountability. At Greyhound Research, we believe sovereign LLMs represent an inflection point where national aspiration meets enterprise obligation. The challenge is to move from symbolism to substance, ensuring models are not just built with pride, but with purpose, predictability, and production-grade performance. What exactly is a sovereign LLM, and why should the enterprise care? Sovereign LLMs are large language models developed, trained, and governed within a specific national or regional boundary. Their appeal lies in the promise of linguistic diversity, local data jurisdiction, and reduced dependency on foreign technology stacks. But let's strip away the sentiment and ask, what does this mean for an enterprise CIO or regulatory stakeholder? At its core, a sovereign LLM is meant to embody a region's linguistic and cultural nuance while staying compliant with local data policies. For instance, while an LLM trained on US-centric datasets might ace an HR chatbot in New York, it may fail to interpret code mix dialects like Hinglish or Bahasa Indonesia English, or understand how cultural references shift meanings subtly across borders. But here's the enterprise dilemma. Many of these sovereign models, while built with the right intention, remain underpowered for real-world deployment. They may support multiple languages in theory, but falter under the weight of code-mixed queries, emotion-laced instructions, or domain-specific tasks. A case in point comes from a Greyhound field note involving a health insurance aggregator in Asia. Their deployment of a regional LLM for claims pre-screening broke down because the model couldn't distinguish between similar expressions for pain across dialects, leading to misclassification of intents and paused deployments. The takeaway? Real fluency is not about dictionary-level accuracy. It's about contextual understanding across region, tone, and domain. According to the Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 62% of enterprise AI leads globally believe sovereign LLMs currently lack the maturity, safety benchmarks, and inference consistency required for enterprise-grade deployment. While summarization tasks may pass, dynamic workflows like customer support, policy automation, or search relevance still show structural brittleness. It's not enough to support a language. Models must learn to speak the culture. Brazilian Portuguese spoken in São Paulo differs meaningfully from the dialect used in Salvador, in tone, slang, and social intent. Arabic in Cairo diverges sharply from Arabic in Casablanca, not just phonetically, but in how emotion and politeness are encoded. Similarly, Hindi in Patna is not the same as Hindi in Varanasi, and that difference carries implications for customer sentiment and task completion. For enterprises, These linguistic subtleties aren't academic. They impact search results, support flows, and decision accuracy. True localization demands more than translation. It requires fine-grained regional corpora, emotion-aware tuning, and inference grounded in sociocultural nuance. This isn't a model per language. It's a language model per linguistic culture. For sovereign LLMs to truly matter, they must do more than just exist. They must deliver enterprise trust, edge resilience, and operational clarity. At Greyhound Research, we believe sovereign LLMs must shift from showcasing surface-level capabilities to solving for enterprise depth. Fluency in regional tongues means little if your model can't survive in production. The question is no longer, can we build one, but can we build one that works at scale, in context, and under pressure? The shift from symbolic models to strategic enterprise expectations. In the early wave of sovereign LLM deployments, the success metric was visibility. How many languages, how fast to launch, and how prominently the initiative could be positioned in national AI agendas. However, for enterprise leaders tasked with actual delivery, that phase has expired. The symbolic era is over. What matters now is whether these models are enterprise-grade, resilient in operations, compliant in governance, and relevant in context. Too many sovereign LLM initiatives are falling into the trap of performative AI. In one Greyhound field note from a digital payments firm, engineers tested a fully open-source LLM for a customer chatbot. While it handled FAQs well, it failed disastrously in edge cases, spitting out toxic language, misinterpreting caste-sensitive inputs, and ultimately threatening reputational harm. The company halted the project and opted for a licensed sovereign model with tighter safety guardrails. The cost, flexibility, the benefit, enterprise-grade control. This tension is echoed in the Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, where 67% of enterprise respondents reported that sovereign models regularly failed in multilingual or code-switched environments, especially under high pressure, real-time conditions like commerce flash sales or healthcare triage. These aren't edge cases. They're the daily realities of modern digital business. The old paradigm of launching a model and hoping adoption follows is crumbling. Enterprises now demand strategic LLM stacks, models that are tunable to domain, compliant with law, observable in ops, and controllable by design. At Greyhound Research, we believe sovereign LLMs must graduate from national showcases to enterprise workhorses. The shift is not from global to local, it's from theatrical to tactical. If your model can't perform under pressure, it shouldn't be in production. The governance multiplier. Why sovereign LLMs enable strategic control. The conversation around sovereign LLMs often fixates on cultural representation and geopolitical independence. However, for enterprise leaders, especially those in regulated sectors, the real prize lies elsewhere: governance. That is, the ability to audit, explain, constrain, and control what the model learns, how it behaves, and where it resides. Consider a Greyhound field note from a telecom provider operating in the Middle East. The firm used a sovereign LLM as part of its call center agent assist system. With confidential user data flowing through the model, local regulations mandated explainability logs and runtime visibility. The open-weight model they initially tested offered neither. After encountering audit challenges and compliance gaps, the firm pivoted to a sovereign LLM platform that included built-in observability, configurable guardrails, and a tamper-proof activity log, restoring trust with both the regulator and internal audit. This need for governance is echoed in the Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025. 71% of enterprise technology leaders say they will only adopt sovereign LLMs that offer transparency in training data, legal clarity in licensing, and infrastructure flexibility to support hybrid deployment. Safety, not sovereignty, is the trigger for procurement. Across financial services, public sector, and pharma regions like the EU, MENA, and Latin America included, auditability is no longer a feature. It's a precondition. Explainability is not optional. Enterprises want not just to deploy AI, but to defend it when questioned by regulators, customers, and shareholders. This expectation is no longer theoretical. The EU AI Act now mandates risk-tiered explainability for high-impact models, while Brazil's LGPD and similar laws in South Africa and the GCC increasingly require disclosure of automated decision-making logic. The age of black box immunity is ending. Many sovereign LLM initiatives present a false binary between open and closed. However, for enterprise buyers, the real need is control with accountability. According to the Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 66% of global CIOs favor controlled open models, architectures where base weights are visible for auditing, but fine-tuning and inference layers are tightly governed. This permissive but protected model, seen in Meta's Llama approach, offers a middle ground between community innovation and commercial defensibility. At Greyhound Research, we believe the most powerful thing a sovereign LLM can offer isn't language parity, it's legal parity. If your model can't survive a compliance audit or explain itself under scrutiny, it doesn't belong in a regulated stack. Governance is no longer the bottleneck. It's the backbone. Do you even need this? The internal questions to ask first. As sovereign LLMs gather political momentum, many enterprises feel pressure to explore them, or worse, adopt them prematurely. But here's the inconvenient truth. Not every organization needs a sovereign LLM, and even fewer are ready to operate one responsibly. Another critical miscalculation is assuming these models can be monetized through simple API token pricing. They can't. Enterprises want service-led partnerships, vertical fine-tuning, deployment support, and performance-linked pricing. The successful sovereign LLM vendor will not just sell access, but co-own outcomes. Think of this less as LLM as a service and more as LLM as a stack, tightly integrated with sector-specific workflows and SLAs. Start with this. Is your organization facing data localization mandates or public pressure around digital self-reliance? If not, you may be trying to solve a sovereignty problem that doesn't exist for you. Now ask, do you have the infrastructure to securely host, fine-tune, and monitor a large-scale model in production? Sovereign LLMs are not plug-and-play. They require bespoke architecture, edge containers, policy wrappers, and performance governance. Third, are your workflows truly language-sensitive or regulation-intensive? In our advisory with a global logistics firm, a pilot deployment of a sovereign LLM for route-based chatbot automation led to operational delays, not because the model was weak, but because the use case didn't require linguistic nuance or regional tuning. The result? Wasted budget, lowered trust, and a postponed roadmap. The Greyhound Sector Pulse 2025 finds that 64% of surveyed enterprises initially overestimated the relevance of sovereign LLMs to their core stack. By the second year of pilot evaluation, nearly half of those firms either scaled back or shelved their sovereign LLM plans entirely. What separates success from failure is clarity. Clarity on regulatory exposure, linguistic edge cases, and internal readiness. At Greyhound Research, we believe the question is not, when should we adopt a sovereign LLM, but why, and on whose terms? Don't mistake a geopolitical moment for a strategic mandate. Enterprise sovereignty begins not with a model, but with a mission. The operational playbook, how to build sovereign LLMs into the enterprise stack. Enterprises that treat sovereign LLMs like a product purchase will be disappointed. These models are not standalone tools. They're living systems that must be orchestrated across people, platforms, and policies. To avoid wasted investment and pilot fatigue, CIOs must approach sovereign LLM adoption as a structured rollout across 4 critical phases, each interlinked, each essential. The first phase is use case prioritization. Too often, organizations default to deploying LLMs in chatbot interfaces or internal tools that don't demand localization, privacy, or regulatory precision. That's a mistake. Instead, enterprises should begin with workloads that are deeply tied to language nuance or policy sensitivity, such as government automation, legal document summarization, or regional voice-based commerce. These contexts offer both urgency and measurable return. The mistake to avoid is assuming one sovereign model can solve for every interaction. It won't. The second phase is architecture planning. Sovereign LLMs demand modular infrastructure, not just cloud APIs. The Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 reveals that only 29% of enterprises globally prefer API-only models, while the remaining 71% actively prioritize containerized or embedded deployment to ensure cost control, latency predictability, and regulatory observability. In one Greyhound field note, a Pan-African e-commerce company abandoned its hyperscaler-hosted LLM after repeated SLA breaches during flash sales. When they moved to a containerized sovereign LLM hosted closer to key markets, they reduced latency by 41% and regained user retention, a clear case of architecture influencing business outcomes. The third phase involves regional deployment readiness. In many economies, particularly across the global south, real-time inference over the cloud is simply unviable. Rural health centers, agricultural logistics hubs, and Tier 2 distribution networks cannot tolerate delays, outages, or bandwidth strain. Sovereign LLMs must offer fallback modes, local inferencing, and compressed models that thrive in constrained conditions. This isn't a performance enhancement, it's a survivability factor. The fourth and final phase is team orchestration and governance design. These models touch infrastructure, policy, and user experience simultaneously. That means enterprises must establish cross-functional teams that include prompt engineers, ML ops leads, compliance architects, and data stewards, all operating under a unified playbook. Governance cannot be bolted on later. It must be designed into the system from the outset, with explainability dashboards, input sanitization layers, runtime policy triggers, and feedback loops embedded as standard. Anything less, and enterprises will be left retrofitting trust into a stack that's already in motion. At Greyhound Research, we believe building with sovereign LLMs is not a sprint to deployment. It's an investment in orchestration. If your teams aren't structured, your infra isn't layered, and your goals aren't clear, no model, sovereign or otherwise, will deliver the returns you seek. Greyhound's standpoint: if you can't govern it, you can't trust it. The sovereign LLM movement is a necessary counterweight to digital hegemony, but it cannot thrive on ambition alone. In enterprise contexts where AI is expected to power decision-making, customer service, compliance workflows, and beyond, trust is not a philosophical concept. It's a design parameter. Sovereignty without reliability is posturing. Open source without governance is chaos. Performance without explainability is a liability. Too many sovereign LLMs today tick the patriotic box but fail the production test. If CIOs and government leaders want real alternatives to hyperscaler APIs, they must demand models that are auditable, deployable, and resilient across scenarios. That means investing in infrastructure, people, partnerships, and policy. It also means resisting the temptation to treat these efforts as one-time moonshots instead of continuous, evolving capabilities. The next wave of AI isn't just about local language support. It's about locally grounded, globally governed intelligence. AI that respects borders, understands users, and earns trust every time it runs. The future belongs to those who can build intelligence that is not only sovereign, but safe, stable, and strategic. At Greyhound Research, we believe that if you can't govern it, you can't trust it, and if you can't trust it, you can't scale it. Analyst in focus: Sanchit Gogia. Sanchit Gogia, or SVG as he is popularly known, is a globally recognized technology analyst, innovation strategist, digital consultant, and board advisor. SVG is the chief analyst, founder and CEO of Greyhound Research, a global, award-winning technology research, advisory, consulting, and education firm. Greyhound Research works closely with global organizations, their CXOs, and the board of directors on technology and digital transformation decisions. SVG is also the founder and CEO of the House of Greyhound, an eclectic venture focusing on interdisciplinary innovation. Copyright policy. All content contained on the Greyhound Research website is protected by copyright law and may not be reproduced, distributed, transmitted, displayed, published, or broadcast without the prior written permission of Greyhound Research or, in the case of third-party materials, the prior written consent of the copyright owner of that content. You may not alter, delete, obscure, or conceal any trademark, copyright, or other notice appearing in any Greyhound Research content. We request our readers not to copy Greyhound Research content and not republish or redistribute them, in whole or partially, via emails or republishing them in any media, including websites, newsletters, or intranets. We understand that you may want to share this content with others, so we've added tools under each content piece that allow you to share the content. If you have any questions, please get in touch with our community relations team at connect@thofker.com.